Right then, hello sweetie. I am back again. The last three videos in this series for the year are going to be an interesting three because I've run out of ideas and can't think of anything that was three videos short. So what I would have done in the last video was the Stanley Parable. I don't know why I'm going to suggest that one goes first because that's the longest one to edit and upload. But fuck it, I enjoy a challenge. I then looked up other games that were less than an hour long in order to try and just do a couple of random videos. And apparently this one can be completed in an hour, and it's called Dagon. Or Dagon? I don't know. Dagon. And it is a HP Lovecraft type thing. And I don't feel like it's much of a game as it is like a narrative experience. And I don't know anything really about Lovecraft other than it's all to do with spooky monsters and at the bottom of the sea and racism. That's about it really, so yeah, let's just roll with it. I'm gonna boot it up. Apparently it doesn't take very long, so about less than an hour, 45 minutes. Fuck knows. I'll probably make it longer by fucking it up, but let's get over here and click the start button. Today, keyboard and mouse. Apparently this does support controller support, which I found out just as I was setting up to record. But I could go and get the controller, so if this fucks up I may stop recording and go and get the controller. We shall see how I cope. Anyway, let's click start. Let's get going. Dagon is a faithful interactive adaptation of H.P. Lovecraft's work, focused on story and atmosphere. You will not find difficult choices, action sequences, or inventory management here, and movement is limited to progressing through locations along with the plot. So,
I am writing this under an appreciable mental strain, since by tonight I shall be no more.
okay, so what have we got? A lovely window. This may narrate it, most of the story and stuff for us. Oh, what's sad, I can't move. Do I click? Oh, he's going to explain to me. Oh, there we go. During gameplay, you will encounter interactive elements. Some of them will allow you to continue your journey. Others reveal interesting facts about the original short story, its historical background, and the author. So there's a round reticule. There's what we're going to describe as a twig and a question mark. Okay. Interesting. Some of the trivia is hidden. In order to find these secrets, focus your eyes by right-clicking. Get magical zoom-in vision. I love games. Zoom in and look for the elder sign. Okay, I know what it is. It's a twig. Fine. Oh, okay. So I just... Oh, it's because it's a VR experience. You sort of just look around. So there's no keyboard. It's just mouse. So that's advancing the story, it would seem. What's that? Oh, I'm going to have to read more than I already have. Lovecraft's letters. As to letters, my case is peculiar. I write such things exactly as easily and as rapidly as I would utter the same topics in conversation. Indeed, fuck me, epistolary expression is with me largely replacing conversation as my condition of nervous prostration becomes more and more acute. I cannot bear to talk much now, and am becoming as silent as the Spectre himself. My loquacity extends itself on paper. H.P. Lovecraft to Reinhard Kleiner, December 23rd, 1917. Yeah, that's not good. Throughout his life, Lovecraft penned around 100,000 letters to his friends and fans, out of which about 10% survive to this day. But his tendency to endless correspondence was a relatively late growth. In youth, I scarcely did any letter writing. Thanking anybody for a present was so much of an ordeal that I would rather have written 250-line pastoral, or a 20-page treatise on the rings of Saturn. Selected letters, 1929 to 1931. H.P. Lovecraft would often skip meals to afford postage collections of his correspondence have been published in various books, and selected letters can be found online. Some readers consider them his most important legacy. You can read the discovered trivia immediately or go back to them later in the main menu. Turn off displaying trivia if you find that feature distracts you from the story. This can be changed at any time in the options. Yeah, show them, because we're going to read them. I'm not coming back. Yeah, this game was free, so it was the right price to do this with. Not that that's a good thing or a bad thing, I just thought it makes things a bit easier. If you just, I've got plenty of games to hand, but there's one that's just free and potentially Spookums, then it would be nice to just roll with it. Is that opium? Is it like a bottle of...
Penniless, and at the end of my supply of the drug which alone makes life endurable, I can bear the torture no longer, and shall cast myself from this garret window into the squalid street below. Do not think from my slavery to morphine that I am a weakling or a degenerate.
Morphine? Oh, that's disorientating. He's leaning forward.
When you have read these hastily scrawled pages, you may guess, though never fully realize, why it is that I must have forgetfulness or death.
Woo! Oh, why is one of my eyes really foggy? No idea. So, just see the desk. The fact that he's hunched over really concerns me, because the mouse does have that access. It didn't need to do this. Morphine entered into use in the 19th century and was routinely administered to treat severe pain during the American Civil War and the World War II. It was also sold without restrictions until 1914. Morphine became more popular after the invention of the hypodermic syringe around 1854. Frederick Serturner, who first isolated the substance, originally named it morphium. Oh, I like that. Morphium. After Morpheus, of course, the Greek god associated with dreams. At the time when Dagon was published, morphine abuse, known as soldier's disease, already posed a big problem in the United States. One that they've not managed to escape from. Oh, wine. It's got a bottle of port or something.
It was in one of the most open and least frequented parts of the broad Pacific that the packet of which I was supercargo fell a victim to the German sea raider.
Hello. Can I move? No, I can't move. Oh. Done. Lovecraft and the Great War. Dagon was written around a month after the United States entered World War I. Lovecraft was actively interested in its cause. He composed many poems in which he gave encouragement to soldiers and commented on the events unfolding in Europe. He tried to enlist the army, which he mentions in one of the letters to Reinhard Kleiner. Some time ago, impressed by my entire uselessness in the world, I resolved to attempt enlistment despite my almost invalid condition. I argued that if I chose a regiment soon to depart for France, my sheer nervous force, which is not inconsiderable, might sustain me until a bullet or a piece of shrapnel could more conclusively and effectively dispose of me. It's a bit dark. Even though he passed the physical exam, his mother prevented him from going to the war. She has threatened to go to any lengths, legal or otherwise, if I do not reveal all the ills which unfit me for the army. I am Providence, the life and times of H.P. Lovecraft. Joshi. Cool. So his mum didn't want him to go. Fair play. Mums tend to do that.
The Great War was then at its very beginning, and the ocean forces of the Hun had not completely sunk to their later degradation.
Look at this game, something. It's pretty, isn't it? zoom in. There'll be something a bit more to zoom in on.
So that our vessel was made a legitimate prize, whilst we of her crew were treated with all the fairness and consideration due us as naval prisoners.
Ah. The Huns. The Huns were Central Asian nomads who established a dominion in Europe and invaded the Roman Empire in the 5th century. They were known as brutal, deadly warriors and masters of quick raid, who also developed powerful composite bows, lassos, and early siege weapons. During World War I, the British used the word Hun as a synonym for Germans in order to emphasize their brutality. However, the term originated when the German Emperor Wilhelm II gave a speech to his troops on the 27th of July 1900 before they embarked to China. Should you encounter the enemy, he will be defeated, no quarter will be given. Prisoners will not be taken. Whoever falls into your hands is forfeited, just as thousands of years ago the Huns, under their king Attila, made a name for themselves, one that even today makes them seem mighty in history and legend. May the name German be affirmed by you in such a way in China that no Chinese will ever again dare to look cross-eyed at a German. The refusal to take prisoners was a clear breach of the laws and customs of war adopted during the First Hague Convention of 1899. World leaders being dicks.
So liberal, indeed, was the discipline of our captors, that 5 days after we were taken, I managed to escape alone, in a small boat, with water and provisions for a good length of time.
Nothing else? Come on, there's been a bit of trivia in every one of these little diorama things. Telling me there's not one here? About a boat or something? No? Right, fine.
When I finally found myself adrift and free, I had but little idea of my surroundings.
Oh no, the camera goes all the way around.
Never a competent navigator, I could only guess vaguely by the sun and stars that I was somewhat south of the equator. Of the longitude, I knew nothing, and no island or coastline was in sight.
I don't know enough about stars to navigate myself. That's very bright. Anything in the boat to talk about? No, I can hear something there. It's weird.
The weather kept fair, and for uncounted days I drifted aimlessly beneath the scorching sun, waiting either for some passing ship or to be cast on the shores of some habitable land.
The return to short stories. Dagon was written in July 1917 and first published in 1919. In the Vagrant, an amateur magazine focused on the supernatural. The story is the first of his stories that introduced an element from the Cthulhu mythos. Dagon itself. A pagan cult worshipping Dagon later appears in the Shadow over Innsmouth, one of Lovecraft's most popular works. In 1917 is also the year when he wrote The Tomb, a story about Jervis Dudley, a daydreamer who discovers a mysterious mausoleum in the woods by his house and becomes obsessed with it. These two works marked Lovecraft's return to short story writing after he burned most of his attempts at the genre 9 years prior and decided to concentrate on poetry. Lovecraft stated that it was his friend William Paul Cook, a literary publisher and critic, who convinced him to start weird fiction again. Weird. did that do? Sort of flick around. Oh, it goes all the way around and it doesn't let me go back. Oh, that's a weird glitch. Ooh. Gonna keep going. No. There we go. I can go around in circles.
But neither ship nor land appeared, and I began to despair in my solitude upon the heaving vastness of unbroken
Staring at
blue.
the sun.
The change happened whilst I slept. Its details I shall never know. For my slumber, though troubled and dream-infested, was continuous.
Oh. Hello. Not a big fan of sea creatures. Oh, endless abysses. No trivia on this page. No.
When at last I awoke, it was to discover myself half sucked into a slimy expanse of hellish black mire, which extended about me in monotonous undulations as far as I could see,
Undulations.
and in which my boat lay grounded some distance away. Though one might well imagine that my first sensation would be of wonder at so prodigious and unexpected a transformation of scenery, I was in reality more horrified than astonished.
Yeah. It's a lot of tentacles.
For there was in the air, and in the rotting soil, a sinister quality which chilled me to the very core. The region was putrid with the carcasses of decaying fish, and of other, less describable things which I saw protruding from the nasty mud of the unending plain. Perhaps I should not hope to convey in mere words the unutterable hideousness that can dwell in absolute silence and barren immensity. There was nothing within hearing, and nothing in sight, save a vast reach of black slime. Yet the very completeness of the stillness and the homogeneity of the landscape oppressed me with a nauseating fear. The sun was blazing down from a sky which seemed to me almost black in its cloudless cruelty, as though reflecting the inky marsh beneath my feet.
And we've got some good descriptors going on. So, looking for any trivia bits. Trivia bits. Interrupting narrative for trivia bits. I don't think so. Seems not to be the case, but we are floating as well. Let's rock and roll. Let's see what's in store for us.
As I crawled into the stranded boat, I realized that only one theory could explain my position. Through some unprecedented volcanic upheaval, a portion of the ocean floor must have been thrown to the surface, exposing regions for which innumerable millions of years had lain hidden under unfathomable watery depths. So great was the extent of the new land which had risen beneath me that I could not detect the faintest noise of the surging ocean, straining my ears as I might. Nor were there any seafowl to prey upon the dead things.
I love where they put some of the continued story things sometimes. Oh, that was an eldritch thing. The mystery of volcanic islands. Volcanic eruptions sometimes result in the creation of islands. Most of them are transient and erode after some time, but some prove permanent. The floating pumice, porous rock created when superheated pressure raised rock is ejected from volcano, can move across long distances and transport barnacles and macroalgae that cling to it. Fuck. In 2001, rafts of pumice created during the eruption of the volcano near Tonga, Polynesia, eventually reached Australia. Rocks, rocks, rocks. Walrus rocks. Walrus rocks. Do.
For several hours I sat thinking or brooding in the boat, which lay upon its side and afforded a slight shade as the sun moved across the heavens.
A fair clip. So weren't there tentacles above this boat? Yeah, why did we come over here again? We come here to name the things that were dying? Because that's dead. Not so much.
As the day progressed, the ground lost some of its stickiness and seemed likely to dry sufficiently for traveling purposes in a short time. That night I slept but little, and the next day I made for myself a pack containing food and water, preparatory to an overland journey in search of the vanished sea and possible rescue.
I don't like you constantly moving tentacles. I swear not every page has a trivia thing, and I'm like, we hit them, and I'm like, yeah, but some of them just aren't here.
On the third morning, I found the soil dry enough to walk upon with ease. The odor of the fish was maddening, but I was too much concerned with graver things to mind so slight an evil, and set out boldly for an unknown goal.
Oh. It's very squelchy.
All day I forged steadily westward, guided by a faraway hummock which rose higher than any other elevation on the rolling desert.
Oh. Oh, I like the textures. They're very pretty in a really grim and gross way. Let's straight at the sun and click. No. A whale. It's like a whale. Almost exactly like a whale. Huh.
That night, I encamped, and on the following day still travelled toward the hummock, though that object seemed scarcely nearer than when I had first espied it.
The horrors of the ocean. As we all know, crabs be gross. The creator of the Cthulhu mythos and the fictional underwater city of R'lyeh was convinced that life could not exist at the bottom of the ocean because the water pressure would make it uninhabitable. Today we know that the darkest depths of the ocean are home to many peculiar organisms. The deepest dwelling fish we have discovered so far, the Mariana snailfish, can live about 8,000 metres or 26,000 feet below the ocean's surface in never-ending darkness and hellishly crushing pressures, hundreds of times stronger than those found at sea level. Upon glancing at the modern photos of deep-sea creatures, such as the anglerfish, the fangtooth, and the viperfish, and their truly Lovecraftian characteristics, it's not hard to find some irony in this. I do find this fascinating because I do think that I wonder what would happen to a creature that could withstand such pressures if you brought it to the surface. Is there that much pressure inside it naturally that it would expand the closer you bring it to the surface? Is that what happened? Like pop, you're gonna get there and be like, just don't know.
the fourth evening, I attained the base of the mound, which turned out to be much higher than it had appeared from a distance. An intervening valley setting it out in sharper relief from the general surface. Too weary to ascend, I slept in the shadow of the hill. I know not why my dreams were so wild that night. But ere the waning and fantastically gibbous moon had risen far above the eastern plain, I was awake in a cold perspiration, determined to sleep no more. Such visions as I had experienced were too much for me to endure again. And in the glow of the moon I saw how unwise I had been to travel by day. Without the glare of the parching sun, my journey would have cost me less energy. Indeed, I now felt quite able to perform the ascent which had deterred me at sunset. Picking up my pack, I started for the crest of the eminence.
The crest of the eminence. The loner. Contrary to popular opinion, Lovecraft was not an ever-frowning, eccentric, grumpy loner. He considered himself to be a person who appreciated humour. Moreover, he would often meet with friends in his apartment or at various cafes in Brooklyn and Manhattan. At times his social life was so intensive his work would suffer for months. There was a point when he finally decided he needed to put an end to daily meetings and loitering in New York's cafeterias, and resorted to hiding at home and reading with the main room lights turned off, pretending he wasn't there whenever a friend knocked on his door. He also had another method of deterring his guests, which involved greeting them in his bathrobe, with an unmade bed visible in the background and piles of papers scattered across the floor. Oh, so he gave the perception of seeming like a crazy loner by becoming a crazy loner. It's fine.
I have said that the unbroken monotony of the rolling plain was a source of vague horror to me. But I think my horror was greater when I gained the summit of the mound and looked down the other side into an immeasurable pit or canyon, whose black recesses the moon had not yet soared high enough to illumine. I felt myself on the edge of the world, peering over the rim into a fathomless chaos of eternal night. Through my terror ran curious reminiscences of Paradise Lost, and of Satan's hideous climb through the unfashioned realms of darkness. As the moon climbed higher in the sky, I began to see that the slopes of the valley were not quite so perpendicular as I had imagined.
Really? Seem pretty fucking perpendicular to me.
Ledges and outcroppings of rock afforded fairly easy footholds for a descent, whilst after a drop of only a few hundred feet, the declivity became very gradual.
Still pretty fucking deep though. You going for this?
Urged on by an impulse which I cannot definitely analyze, I scrambled with difficulty down the rocks and stood on the gentler slope beneath, gazing into the Stygian deeps, where no light had yet penetrated. All at once, my attention was captured by a vast and singular object on the opposite slope, which rose steeply about 100 yards ahead of me. An object that gleamed whitely in the newly bestowed rays of the ascending moon.
It's kind of cool.
That it was merely a gigantic piece of stone, I soon assured myself. but I was conscious of a distinct impression that its contour and position were not altogether the work of nature. A closer scrutiny filled me with sensations I cannot express.
This is why when people suggest that sort of Lovecraft and the horror does, it's more sort of implied rather than actually being grotesque or horrible.
For despite its enormous magnitude and its position in an abyss which had yawned at the bottom of the sea since the world was young, I perceived beyond a doubt that the strange object was a well-shaped monolith, whose massive bulk had known the workmanship and perhaps the worship of living and thinking creatures. Dazed and frightened, yet not without a certain thrill of the scientist's or archaeologist's delight, I examined my surroundings more closely.
I'm still just zooming in for things. Doesn't seem very obvious though. Not really much about.
The moon, now near the zenith, shone weirdly and vividly above the towering steeps that hemmed in the chasm, and revealed the fact that a far-flung body of water flowed at the bottom, winding out of sight in both directions and almost lapping my feet as I stood on the slope. Across the chasm, the wavelets washed the base of the cyclopean monolith, on whose surface I could now trace both inscriptions and crude sculptures. The writing was in a system of hieroglyphics unknown to me and unlike anything I'd ever seen in books, consisting for the most part of conventionalized aquatic symbols such as fishes, eels, octopi, crustaceans, mollusks, whales, and the like. Several characters obviously represented marine things which are unknown to the modern world, but whose decomposing forms I had observed on the ocean-risen plain. It was the pictorial carving, however, that did most to hold me spellbound.
Storytelling methods. Dagon contains many themes of storytelling methods that Lovecraft developed in his later works, such as telling the story through carvings, the Mountains of Madness, the Nameless City, journals and characters' notes, the Shadow at Time, the Haunter of the Dark, islands emerging from the ocean, Call of Cthulhu, or fictional beings, deities, based on real events and mythologies. Migo, the Whisperer of the Darkness. It also considered the origin of popular Cthulhu myths. Some of Lovecraft's other stories also conclude in a manner similar to Dagon, but let's skip the details in order to not spoil the ending. You've probably read this.
Plainly visible across the intervening water on account of their enormous size were an array of bas-reliefs whose subjects would have excited the envy of a Doré. I think that these things were supposed to depict men, at least a certain sort of men. Though the creatures were shown disporting like fishes in the waters of some marine grotto, or paying homage at some monolithic shrine which appeared to be under the waves as well. Of their faces and forms I dare not speak in detail, for the mere remembrance makes me grow faint. Grotesque beyond the imagination of a Poe or a Bulwer. They were damnably human in general outline, despite webbed hands and feet, shockingly wide and flabby lips, glassy, bulging eyes, and other features less pleasant to recall. Curiously enough, they seemed to have been chiseled badly out of proportion with their scenic background. For one of the creatures was shown in the act of killing a whale, represented as but little larger than himself. I remarked, as I say, their grotesqueness and strange size, but in a moment decided that they were merely the imaginary gods of some primitive fishing or seafaring tribe. Some tribe whose last descendant had perished eras before the first ancestor of the Piltdown or Neanderthal man was born. Awestruck at this unexpected glimpse into a past beyond the conception of the most daring anthropologist, I stood musing whilst the moon cast queer reflections on the silent channel before me. Then, suddenly, I saw it.
Oh, hello.
With only a slight churning to mark its rise to the surface, the thing slid into view above the dark waters. Famous-like and loathsome, it darted like a stupendous monster of nightmares to the marlin, about which it flung its gigantic scaly arms, the while it bowed its hideous head and gave vent to certain measured sounds. I think I went mad then. Of my frantic ascent of the slope and cliff, and of my delirious journey back to the stranded boat.
I remember little. I think I clicked too soon. Sorry. Suspense.
I believe I sang a great deal and laughed oddly when I was unable to sing. Indistinct recollections of a great storm sometime after I reached the boat. At any rate, I know that I heard pearls of thunder and other tones which nature utters only in her wildest moods. When I came out of the shadows, I was in a San Francisco hospital, brought thither by the captain of the American ship which had picked up my boat in mid-ocean. In my delirium, I had said much, but found that my words had been given scant attention. Of any land upheaval in the Pacific, my rescuers knew nothing. Nor did I deem it necessary to insist upon a thing which I knew they could not believe.
The journalist. Lovecraft was a prominent figure in the world of amateur journalism. In 1915, he started publishing his own journal called The Conservative, which included a political and social commentary, poetry, short stories, and literary criticism written by him and other authors. Howard? Oh, HP, yeah. Was a skilled fucking hell, words. Was a skilled wordsmith, but he also took criticisms to heart, which resulted in his decision to step away from writing and poetry, concentrate on weird fiction again, for the first time since his teenage years. Dagon, published in 1919, is one of the short stories written during that period. In this example excerpt from The Conservative, the master of horror fiction explains his attitude towards warfare and the idea of world peace. Why any sane human being can believe in the possibility of universal peace is more than the Conservative can fathom. Should the entire civilized world agree simultaneously to disarm, one or more nations would undoubtedly retain secret armaments at the proper time, and at the proper time take advantage of their more altruistic and less astute contemporaries in a wild career of consequence against unarmed victims. No country is or ever can be above warfare until the basic impulses of the human animal have miraculously changed. Yeah, I think that's the worry. Nobody would ever fully agree to give up arms if they even suspected somebody else might have some. You hid that there. That one was smartly hidden. The atheist. Lovecraft considered himself an atheist and absolute materialist, which he attributed partly to his early childhood interest in astronomy and science in general. In his own words, I am indeed an absolute materialist so far as an actual belief goes, which not a shred of credence in any form, supernaturalism, religion, spiritualism, transcendentalism, metapsychoism, or immortality. All I'll say is that I think it is damned unlikely that anything like central cosmic will, a spirit would, or an internal survival of personality exist. They are most preposterous and unjustified of all guesses which can be made about the universe, and I am not enough of a hairsplitter to pretend that I don't regard them as arrant and negligible moonshine. In theory, I am an agonist, but pending the appearance of the radical evidence, I must be classed, practically and provisionally, as an atheist. Fair play.
Once I sought out a celebrated ethnologist and amused him with peculiar questions regarding the ancient Philistine legend of Dagon, the fish god.
Ooh. Dagon, that's how you say it. Dagon, Dagon. There's gonna be so much to click on in this, isn't there? Ooh. Dagon was the main deity of the Philistines, worshipped throughout the Middle East as an ancient god of fertility and crops. In Hebrew, the word Dagon was a common noun for grain. The rulers of Akkad, Mesopotamia, chose him as a patron saint of their war conquests. He also appeared as the judge of the dead in an Assyrian poem, an underworld prison warder in one of the Babylonian texts. He is often mistakenly taken for a fish god due to the wrong interpretation of his name, as in Hebrew the word Dag means fish. In H.P. Lovecraft's work, Dagon is an underwater deity ruling over the deep ones, a humanoid race with fish traits that reside in the oceans. He is worshipped by a secret cult called the Esoteric Order of Dagon. Dagon, he said it, and I still mispronounced it. What's that? That's progress in story. Any more eldritch nonsense? Very pretty looking office, isn't it? You bastard. Yes, you can ding dong all you like. Anyway.
But soon perceiving that he was hopelessly conventional, I did not press my inquiries.
The Necronomicon. August Derleth and the Cthulhian Mythos. August Derleth was an American writer and anthologist. He also befriended Lovecraft and published many of his works through his company Arkham House. Arkham House. I said that really brummy then for a second. Arkham House. Although that wasn't brummy. He greatly contributed to the popularization of the author's work after his death. He is surrounded by numerous controversies. One of his most questionable decisions involved introducing the good versus evil doctrine. Derleth was a devout Catholic to Cthulhian mythos, which contrasted with Lovecraft's view of the world and his approach to cosmic horror. As a result, the author's works are often misunderstood and misrepresented in today's culture. It is also worth noting that Lovecraft was never really interested in creating mythology. The term Cthulhian mythos was coined by Derleth after the author left the mortal plane. Died. Earth 3 ceased to be. Empty bookshelves. I was going to say get more books, but it was at a time when probably there weren't so many books. Oh, that's another one. The Marketer. Lovecraft's attempts to find a job in 1925 were influenced by advice he received from friends. Among others, he started freelancing for a marketing magazine where he would write announcements and commercials. Feel free to judge his copywriting skills for yourself. From an ad for Curtis Woodwork. Curtis' woodwork embraces both the usual structural units and the cleverest controversies of built-in or permanent furniture, such as bookcases, dressers, buffets, and cupboards. Every model is conceived and created with the purest art, ripest scholarship, and mellowest craftsmanship which energetic enterprise can command, and made to conform rigidly to the architecture of each particular type of home. The cost, considering the quality, is amazingly low, and the trademark on the individual pieces prevents any substitution by careless contractors. Huh. Huh. I don't even know where the thing to continue is in this one. Oh, it's all the way over there. It's rare that it lets me go all the way around in the camera. Ding dong. Looking for things to click on. Thought he'd narrated a bit there, but he didn't. Oh, there's another eldritch thing in the clock. The scientist! These days the word scientist is a widely accepted term, but at the time Dagon was published, it was subject to a wide debate. After the author used it in the story, critics pointed out that man of science was a more appropriate term to employ. He admitted in the defense of Dagon, that if Dagon were to be reprinted, he would indeed use the phrase they suggested. Scientist was coined as an analogue to artist, to be used when referring to those who are studying different branches of science. Yet in the 19th century and the early 20th century, scientific researchers in Great Britain and the United States were of the opinion that man of science, resembling the term man of letters, was the only proper choice. Among other things, it was gender specific, indicating that science was an endeavour to be pursued by only one sex. Of course it was. The term scientist became accepted only after the World War II, and man of science started fading into obscurity as an old-fashioned synonym. Your mum's an old-fashioned synonym. Right. That doesn't even make sense. Just tickle me there. No, I can't go further that way. Back this way. Clop, 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 clop. Oh?
It is at night, especially when the moon is gibbous and waning, that I see the thing. I tried morphine, but the drug has given only transient surcease, and has drawn me into its clutches as a hopeless slave. So now I am to end it all, having written a full account for the information or the contemptuous amusement of my fellow men.
Oh. That's dark. Lovecraft on tobacco and alcohol. Lovecraft hated tobacco, even though he used to smoke when he was 12 in order to look and feel like an adult. In his correspondence with his friend Reinhard Kleiner, he claims that he quit as soon as he started wearing long pants. I just imagine one day he's just like, I just getting ash on me trousers. He also had a very strong opinion about alcohol, as evidenced by his letter to Zelia Brown. As for the matter of drinking, I have never tasted intoxicating liquor, and never intend to, having a strong aesthetic disgust at anything which blunts or coarsens the delicate natural equipoise of the evolved human intellect and imagination. Jesus, very wordy. Such a wordy person, isn't he? It's not a bad thing, but it's just like, you went a roundabout way of saying that. Drinking excited my personal repugnance, hence I don't drink. Let the herd do what they will. I am rather in favour of prohibition. Prohibition of any one antisocial force, as well as another of any other. Okay, yeah, just words. Your prose are getting to me now, Lovecraft. You wordy bastard. Right, any eldritch things on the desk? Just click randomly, couldn't I? Clicking randomly every inch or two. Clicking randomly, just progress the story.
Often, I ask myself if it could not all have been a pure phantasm, a mere freak of fever as I lay sun-stricken and raving in the open boat after my escape from the German man-of-war. This I ask myself, but ever does there come before me a hideously vivid vision in reply. I cannot think of the deep sea without shuddering at the nameless things that may at this very moment be crawling and floundering on its slimy bed, worshipping their ancient stone idols and carving their own detestable likenesses on submarine obelisks of water-soaked granite. I dream of a day when they may rise above the billows to drag down into their reeking talons the remnants of puny, war-exhausted mankind. Of a day when the land shall sink and the dark ocean shall ascend amidst universal pandemonium.
Oh, okay. Doom and gloom.
The end is near. I hear a noise at the door, as of some immense slippery body lumbering against it. It shall not find me. God, that hand! The window! The window!
Wow, okay. That's intense. Isn't that intense? Hope you enjoyed immersing yourself in a little pool of cosmic horror. We appreciate if you took a moment to rate Dagon and check out the other games and DLCs. It's just going to be people reading stories back to me, I feel. Anyway, there we go. That was Dagon. It's a Lovecraft thing. I hope you even remotely interested in Lovecraft, because if not, this is going to have been a waste of time. But anyway, it wasn't really that spooky as much as it was a little surreal. A little sort of that unnerving dread of, is it real, isn't it? Ooh, horrors at the depths, etc., etc. Anyway, I'll speak to you soon, and I'll see you in the next one. The final one for the year, at least, anyway. Oh. There's a couple I missed. 1, 2, 3. 3 I missed. Unlock. You can unlock all trivia in this category, but you won't get associated achievements. You'll see how to find them during the game. Ah, fuck it, I don't care. And there's like DLC ones. Railway Horror. There's something for that one. No trivia for you. Anyway. Thank you for joining me, and I shall see you in the next video. Ta-ra!